Alright, welcome back, guys. Today we are going to be talking about this rifle right here. This is a Palmetto State Armory AR-10. I think they call it the PSA-10 or the PA10, one of the two, I don't remember. But I just want to talk about my experiences with this gun. Now, if you're familiar with the AR-10 platform in general, you'll know that most companies charge an arm and a leg for it. You're going to spend at least $1,000 on most companies, AR-10s.
I am never going to financially recover from this.
A lot of them are proprietary. They're not, one size fits all like it is with an AR-15. You can't just take, the bolt carrier group from one, put it in another, or the lower from one, put it with another. Like, they're all kind of different. And there's two different types. I don't remember off the top of my head what they are, but you have two different, types of lowers. Like, one's a DPMS, which I believe this one is. And then the other one's, slightly different, where the only difference is where they meet, instead of being rounded, it's like squared off. And that's basically the only real difference. The new, their longer range one that's like it's like their Saber 308, whatever it's called, I think actually has that more, the other style where it's like kind of straight. I'll insert annotations here of what I'm trying to say. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. But anyway, so my experience with this, and the reason why I wanted to buy one of these was mainly the price. So again, because everything else is around $1,000 or more, I didn't really want to spend that. So I was like, well, let's look and see what PSA has. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of PSA, not because I don't like the company or I don't like the warranty or, whatever, their prices are outrageous, because they're not. I just don't like their quality control and or lack thereof. Now, to be fair, for the price you pay, I mean, that's kind of to be expected. You're not getting, BCM or Sons of Liberty Gun Works or, insert, Gucci brand here quality control, or what should be quality control, and whenever you spend a lot of money, because you're not spending a lot of money with this kind of thing. This rifle, I believe, shipped, and including like FFL transfer fees and all that kind of stuff for the lower, because the upper was a blemish, and I could not find a single blemish on it. Maybe there's one internally that I couldn't see, but I couldn't find one. So the upper was I believe it's a 1 in 10 twist barrel, and it was a stainless barrel. You can't tell right now because it's spray painted, but if you look at the previous video footage, which I'll have a bunch of video footage in here, I'm gonna have to edit. But I have a bunch of it, but it is a stainless barrel, and which I wanted because I was more worried about accuracy than barrel life or longevity. Because it's not a 6.5 Creedmoor. You get a 6.5 Creedmoor, you might as well cut the barrel life in half. Versus stainless on something like this that you're going to be firing relatively slow. Your barrel life is going to be significantly higher. And I also didn't want to get, their nitride barrel, even though it would last a little bit longer. I was more worried about accuracy. Now, later on down the road, if I outshoot this barrel, sure, I might, put a different one in there. But, for now, this is what I wanted. And I also liked on here, as you can tell, the Picatinny rail kind of disappears right about here. And that's... you can buy different designs. I wanted this one because I'm not going to strap, flashlights or anything, or night vision devices or anything on the front, so not even iron sights. So there's no real reason to have all that wasted weight up there, unless you just want to carry a 15-pound gun. Now, that said, people talk about how AR-10s weigh a bunch, and I'm not going to go full nut and fancy and go into all the specs and all that kind of stuff, or, size and weight constraints. I'm not going to get that far into it. But what I will say is it's actually surprisingly light. The bolt carrier group, yeah, is, beefier, so that adds some weight. And then the receivers themselves are slightly bigger, so yeah, that adds a little bit of weight. But all in all, it weighs about the same as my old Aero Precision, the M4E1. If you're familiar with that, it's kind of their proprietary, monolithic rail that basically bolts into their proprietary upper receiver. If you're familiar with that, and they're kind of bull barrel and they're 223 wilds, it weighed about the same as that. Maybe slightly heavier, but, fit and or just to my hands, what I could feel, it reminded me very much of that. Now, to be fair, once you strap a scope on here, you're gonna add a bunch of weight. And then this scope up here, this is a Discovery Opt. I've done a review on it. I don't remember what it was, but it was one I wanted to put on a 308 specifically, and it's been shooting on here, and it's been holding zero just fine. I've been getting really good accuracy out of this, shooting all this stuff over here, which, again, I'll talk about. The main point I want to talk about this video is accuracy and, kind of the bang for the buck. And I'm also going to talk about some of the quality control issues I've had with this gun, because I've had some growing pains with this. Now, to be fair, because I don't think I mentioned it earlier, it was about $650 to maybe $700, somewhere in that range by the time I got magazines, FFL transfer fees and shipping and all that kind of stuff. but I got this on sale, and you can find these, the lowers and the uppers and all kinds of parts on sale usually. So you're going to spend anywhere around, let's just say $700 for a, complete gun, more or less. Now, if you, build it yourself, slap it together. The lower I bought complete, and the upper I bought complete. Now, you'll see on here in a second, I'll show you more up close. The stock on here is actually an A1 stock. I put an A1 buffer and stock on there, and then I put a rifle 308 buffer in there instead of the standard carbine buffer it came with, because it comes with a standard carbine buffer tube with a Magpul MOE stock is what I got, and it comes with a carbine 308 weight buffer, which is lighter than the buffer that's in there right now. Now, part of that is just aesthetics. I just like the look of a solid stock on a, on a DMR or a long range gun. I just think it looks better. But also it does help the recoil. I won't say substantially, but it does help quite a bit. Now that said, this also has an adjustable gas block up there, and for those wondering, here is all the settings for the different ones for their gas blocks on there. So there's that, and it comes with this really long Allen key that I never touched that you can use to adjust the gas block. So could I have adjusted the gas block to fine tune it? I sure could have. Did I see the necessity of it? Absolutely not, because this gun was 100% reliable. Now granted, this is not, a T-Rex Arms, 5,000 round, 308 video. I fired probably around 100 to maybe 150 at the most rounds through this gun so far. So, I mean, that's not saying a lot, but generally, if you're going to see problems with the gun, it's going to be within the first couple hundred rounds. And I'm not going to, just burn down 500 rounds just to, see if it's reliable or not. It's a $600, $700 gun. It's not worth that. To me, I was more worried about just kind of ammo compatibility and what accuracy-wise, like what I could get out of this gun. The first thing I want to talk about again is the barrel. It is stainless. It took about 50 to 75 rounds to really break it in. So I tested out ammo 3 different times. And the first time I tested it, I got decent accuracy out of the good stuff and pretty terrible accuracy out of the cheap stuff. And then, which, again, here's all the stuff over here. I'll show a close-up of all these different things here in a second so you can see what they are, but I'll tell you what they are as well. But initially, I got kind of cruddy accuracy, actually really cruddy accuracy out of the M80 ball stuff and anything that was less than 150 grains, like the 147, 148 grain stuff. The 150 grain, some of it shot okay, some of it did not initially. The second time I shot, basically everything shot better. And it took, about 50 to 75 rounds before I started seeing it to where it didn't improve anymore. It just basically kind of stayed where it was. So there is a little bit of a break-in period. That's not that big of a deal. The twist rate on here, for what it's worth on that barrel, it is designed for heavier grain bullets, so it's going to shoot that better. Now, what I really wanted to see is whether or not this gun would shoot all of this cheaper stuff over here well. And so I bought some match grade stuff, and because I want something to be able to shoot long range, but I also figured if you're spending $700 on a 308, you're going to want to basically shoot cheap stuff out of it, because if you can afford nice ammo, you can afford a nice gun. Not by a lot, though. I'm gonna have to show you this groove. So again, I jerked around one time, and also I lubed the snot out of it, so there's probably some lubricant down in the barrel. But basically I just made one ragged hole, so I'll show you here. This is steel case. That is, this part of your finger, this pad, is about 1 inch. That's about a 1 inch group. That's insane. I hope it shoots this well with all the other crap. If I can buy cheap 150 grain stuff, I'm gonna be thrilled. I don't know if you can see that on there, but it says GGG on there, and I can look up and see what that actually was later. Okay, well that stuff has the worst accuracy known to man. I might fire one more group out of that, but holy crap, that stuff sucks. All right, so again, this is that GGG labeled stuff. It's some type of like military surplus-esque type M80 ball. Absolutely horrendous. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That one was me. It could have been me. I jerked one other slightly, but not by that much. But even still, 1, 2, 3, 4, that is, I mean, that's like 8, 9 inches. That's absolutely horrendous. So not gonna be buying any more of that stuff. So this stuff is marked IK22. So I don't know. I don't remember if it's Igman or if it's something else. I'm gonna aim at the bottom middle target on this one. Hey! That one's at least in the green. All right, here's that IK22. Again, I don't remember if it's Igman. I'll annotate what it is. But there's my finger. That would be 3 inches. So roughly, that's probably around a 4.5 inch group. It's not good, but it's not nearly as bad as that monstrosity up there. So I guess for target shooting, I might have to actually buy nicer stuff. All right, so this was actually not as good as I thought it was. I thought I jerked one, but I don't think I did because I fired 4 rounds. I thought that was the first round. Apparently it was not. I guess one of these were the first round. So it's possible that this is actually my group and this is not. Again, at worst case scenario, it's almost a 3 inch group. All right, so here's my new group. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I think that was another one. I don't remember firing 5. Maybe I fired 5 last time, but that's weird that there's that much of a shift. I'm going to check my scope and see if maybe it's not holding 0 or if it came loose or something. Not great. And these, again, were windy. So those were probably me. And that was probably me. So about a 3 inch group. That's not terrible. I'll take it. PMC match. And again, I fired the first round out at the steel target. No, not this. 2 rounds to the same hole. 1 round just slightly off, and my heartbeat is making this thing. I'm actually aiming here. My reticle gets lost in this black circle because it's about 1/3 to 1/2 the size of this black dot, so it's somewhere in this area. So however big this is, you can give that kind of a margin of error, and then in reality I'm probably only able to hold it on here with the trigger. The trigger probably makes me pull it slightly into this area, so that's all within user error, but that's a less than 1 inch group right there. So the gun's capable of shooting well. It's just, I'm gonna have to pay money for it to shoot well, which kind of sucks. All right, here's the second group from the PMC match. I think it's a 168 grain. This was me, 100% me. I called that on myself. 1, 2, 3. And even if you include the previous, which it's had a chance to cool off slightly, the breeze is now blowing, whereas it wasn't blowing here. So I think the wind slightly changed where it was hitting, and the wind's been consistently blowing for that last group. So even if you don't consider that, that's still a 1.5 inch group. So that's still fantastic. I'm thrilled. Again, that was me. Right, again, Winchester 175 stuff. There's my group. I jerked the crap out of that one, but there's my other group. Fantastic group. All right, so this group was a little bit rushed, but I'm seeing the same general thing. 1 around here, 1 around here, 1 around here, 1 around here. So it really doesn't like the Razor Core that much. Now, granted, that's still if I was doing my part, that's still roughly a 2-inch group. But for the price, that's the most expensive stuff. It's not worth it. There's gonna be some Winchester. This is the M118 long range stuff. It's 175 grain Sierra Match King. So this is the, I think what shot the most accurately out of it before, if I remember correctly. This stuff and the X-Tac Precision or Match or whatever it was called. There's a good trigger pull. All right, so scope's fine. Again, here's 1, 2, 3, 4. That is roughly an inch group based on my finger. Maybe slightly over, but again, with me as a shooter and I'm not in exactly a stable position, I have one of the worst benches out here. That was cold bore shot, so I don't blame that. But again, 1-inch group, that's with the Winchester long range, but 118 stuff, so or whatever it was called.
It's gonna be this 147 grain full metal jacket. It's made by Freedom Munitions. All the stuff I'm testing today is Freedom Munitions. It's the next cheapest ammo type I could find. It's not like, you know, just name brand stuff. And I have a whole bunch of stuff out here I'm going to test. But 147 is up first. I expect this not to shoot well based on the other, 7.62 like M80 ball type stuff. If it shoots well, then, you know, great. I'm still looking for the cheapest option out there to shoot. But I also have 150 grain and then a bunch of their, you know, higher grain bullets just to test it out. Those may have actually shot really well. And if they did, that's going to be what I'm buying from now on.
All right, here's the first group. That was the 147 grain. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. That is an inch. So that's impressive, especially for 147 grain, considering my barrel did not like the other brands. So this was a cold bore shot. This is the 168 grain. This is the third group I shot. Here's the cold bore shot. I know that one hit because I saw it. So you have 1, 2, 3. Again, that's inside of an inch group for the 168 grain match. And then here's a 150 grain. I thought this would actually shoot better because it liked the Wolf 150 grain. But you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and all of those were pretty decent trigger pulls. So I don't think that was necessarily me. I think that's just, it didn't necessarily like that ammo type. But that, again, is a 150 grain free munition stuff. All right, so here is the 175 grain, the hollow point boat tail match, whatever it is, made by Freedom Munitions. So my first shot, this is a cold bore shot, was down here, so I expect it to be different. My second shot was actually this one right here. And then my third shot was this one right here. And I thought, I don't know, maybe I pulled that one a little bit. And then my last shot was here again. So that was the first group. Then I fired 3 more rounds. And then my first round hit here. My second round, I also thought hit here, but it did not. It actually hit here. And then my last round hit here. And those all felt like decent trigger pulls. I may have jerked one. Maybe that one was me. It's possible. But even so, that's still, I mean, that's still 1.5 inches, maybe 1.25 inches group. So that's not bad. But, I mean, considering that's 175 grain, the 168 seems to be doing a little bit better. So I'm not going to reshoot that one again because that shoots fairly well. Maybe if I get bored or something, I might. The ammo for this review is not cheap. And I bought it all myself because I'm not a big enough channel yet. If you're an ammo company and you want to sponsor me, have at it. All right, and here is the last ammo type of Freedom Munitions, the 175 grain. This is their 118 long range, you know, clone essentially. So my cold bore shot was here. And then my next shot, I believe, was this one. And then I had this one, which was weird. And then my last shot of the first string was here. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that, which is, I mean, that's a 2.5 inch group, maybe. That's not fantastic. So I thought, well, I'm going to shoot another group. So I shot a few more, and I had one. That one was me, 100%. That was on me. And I shot two more, 1, 2, because I messed that one up. So the cold bore shot was actually in line with 3 of them, but then the other 3 were over here, and they were not that bad at trigger pulls. So I'm going to assume that whatever bullet Free Munitions is using for the 175 grain, because up here and up here, it shot well sometimes, but then sometimes it didn't. So something, either the bullet or the powder or the charge or something is inconsistent with what they're using. So I'm not going to buy that, because that to me is not accurate enough for a 175 grain. Whenever my other one shot all of them into basically one hole, and for the price, this one's not much cheaper. All right, here's the 147 grain. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's roughly somewhere around 1.5 inches, I would say. It's possible that was me as a flyer, and so was that. This is pretty respectable. It's about 1 inch if you don't include those 2. But again, I don't know if those were me. This was not my best shooting, so I would say that it's probably about a 1.5 inch group on average. This was 100% me. I know that was me. That I don't believe was. So you have 1, 2, 3, if you count that group. So that's consistent with what I was getting earlier. So I know, I mean, there's no way I jerked every single round. So I'm going to say the 147 shoots pretty well. I'm going to shoot the 147 one more time. I'm going to have a different point of view. I'm going to aim at this 9 here and just kind of see where it goes. So far, basically, I'm not impressed with the 175, not impressed with the other 175, not impressed with the 150. I mean, that's not bad. You know, that's still a 2-inch group. That's not terrible, but considering this one shoots a little bit better, why not go with that? The 168 seems to be good as well. I don't know if I'll buy that or not, but I'm going to shoot the 147 grain one more time and probably the 168 grain one more time. All right, so the 147 grain stuff is another group right here. That was the first shot. Cold bore, here's the other 3. And I thought I jerked that one just ever so slightly right, and I did. It would have probably been stacked on top of those, because whenever I pulled the trigger, it wasn't here, it's just like right about here. So again, but that's still under 1 inch group. So this stuff, this 147 grain is very consistent. Obviously, you know, first shot doesn't count. This one over here, that was the first shot. The other 2, you had one here. This is the 168 grain federal, not federal, but the Free Munitions match. So you have 1, 2, 3, and that was the first shot. So that could have been me. I don't know, but anyways, fairly respectable. I would say that's all in the 1 inch group. And considering I'm not the best shot in the world, these are both cold bores. That's the only one that was out. That was probably most likely me jerking it. The trigger is not phenomenal. It's basically a polished mil-spec trigger. And I'm on sandbags that are kind of shifty. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. If I buy the Free Munitions stuff, it's going to be the 147 grain for cheap stuff, and then 168 match for longer range stuff. The 175, it doesn't like well enough, at least in my opinion. I mean, that's not bad. It's not a bad group, but it's just inconsistent. Because again, that one was a good trigger pull, and so was that one. So anyways, that's just my takeaway. All right, again, the handguard I already talked about. I wanted something lightweight, and it honestly looks kind of cool. And I don't have anything to strap on it, so I don't need anything fancy. I have some reservations with Palmetto State Armory's handguards because they've come off before. I've had one myself where the handguard came loose and started sliding forward, and then one of my buddies, he bought the complete upper, it came off as well during a training session, to where it started the whole, forward started sliding forward. Now this one, I believe, has some type of anti-rotation, device. It has these little tabs on the side right here, and I think the 3 screws has a little bit more torque, so that in theory should keep it from sliding off, because this at the end more or less just kind of clamps over the barrel nut. From what I remember, I haven't taken this one apart, but I believe that's how it was attached on all the other ones, so I assume this one's built the same. It does not have a little locking mechanism, that has an indentation that lines up with a groove in the barrel nut like a lot of other companies do, like Midwest Industries. It doesn't have that, so I wish Palmetto State Armory would use something like that. Even the brand Stinger, I think it's STNGR maybe? Stinger, I don't know. Anyway, something like that. It's not actually spelt out Stinger. But I have one of their handguards on my other rifles, and it even uses kind of like a cheap knockoff version of the Midwest Industries, a little locking tab, and I wish Palmetto State Armory would do something like that, but for what it's worth, it hasn't come loose. And since nothing's on it, it's just basically to keep your hand from getting burned and to keep the barrel free floated. No real complaints. The muzzle device down at the end, I can't show it to you. It's way too much of a pain to move this gun. It's an A2 birdcage, more or less, just upsized. It worked fine. At some point, I might put a muzzle device on here. There's not a whole lot of recoil, honestly. People talk about 308s recoiling a lot, and to be fair, it does. It's probably twice as punchy as an AK if you shot an AK. With the lighter grain stuff. With the heavier grain stuff, it's a little bit, more than that. But again, you can adjust the gas block if you really want to fine tune it. Put a heavier buffer like I did, over here, and you'll be fine. It's not that bad. Shooting the heavier 175 grain stuff is still perfectly manageable. So the conclusion I came to, long story short, is get this stuff if you want to shoot cheap, and then get this stuff if you want to shoot long range. At least that's what my rifle likes. Again, all of the heavier grain, the 168 and the 175 grain stuff, except for this, for whatever reason, shot, 1 to 2 inches, somewhere in that range. But again, these gave the best accuracy. The charging handle is absolute trash. And I say that not because, the materials that they use are not good. I think they are. The materials are probably fine. But trying to grab this thing whenever you have a scope on there is basically impossible. Right now, I put a Radian Raptor charging handle on here. And that is substantially better. It allows you to actually rack it. With this thing, I could rack it, but man, it was a pain. Now, to be fair, it was whenever the gun was breaking in, and that was kind of one of the issues I had with it as well, was the bolt, or the bolt carrier group, whatever you want to call it. Whenever the bolt was fully in battery, just racking out a round was incredibly hard to do. It got easier, so I think, there's just a little bit of, metal rubbing on metal. Once I lubed it and shot a little bit, it got substantially better, and now it's pretty much smooth, so I guess maybe there's a burr or something in there. I don't know. But anyway, so that was kind of annoying. Again, I mentioned it before, but the ejection pattern with everything was perfect. With they tune it, the gas block, to the 150 grain stuff. At least that's what they say that they do. With that stuff, it was ejecting, here-ish, around the 3, maybe the 4 o'clock position, depending on the ammo types. Some of it would eject kind of, right at 3. The heavier grain stuff, it would eject kind of around the 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, somewhere in that range. So the gas setting was perfect. I wouldn't change it. If you're going to suppress this thing, which I did not, because I don't have a suppressor. Not yet, at least. If you're going to suppress it, you'll probably want to adjust the gas settings. But that's one nice thing, is instead of being stuck with a fixed, gas block with whatever port size you use, like, for instance, Aero Precision, if you want to use a suppressor, you can actually adjust this. Now, to be fair, I'm not a big fan of adjustable gas blocks because I've seen them fail on multiple guns, and I don't trust them as much. But if you're going to suppress something, especially something like this that might be finicky, it is an option. Again, I prefer to mess with the back end of the gun, not, the gas block where, you're basically turning a little screw, to handle all that pressure. I don't really trust detents and something like that. But again, your mileage may vary. I chose to, deal with the back end, not the fore end. For $650 to $700, like, any complaint I have is not necessarily against Palmetto, because for that price, I expect to do a little bit of tinkering. So as I talk negatives, just keep that in mind. So the issues, I will show you pictures of this if I can find them in my phone. They're somewhere in there. But the grip it came with was not this Magpul MOE grip. It actually came with another grip that I threw on another gun, but it's like for lack of better words, it's basically an A1 grip that's rubberized. And there was 2 problems with that. One, where the way that they did the rubberizing, there's a little spring that's not for your safety selector, but it's actually for your takedown, the detent. Well, it's for the detent for your takedown pin. And the spring provides pressure on that, and it basically sits in another little tiny hole or indentation. On the rubberized version, because it's rubber, that rubber absorbs some of the spring pressure, so the spring kind of set cattywampus and like looked bent. And at first I thought they installed the thing and they bent it, but they didn't. It's just the rubber doesn't handle that well. So they need to redesign that. Drill out a small hole, don't rubberize that part. I don't know, something. But that's just a small little complaint. And again, I'm nitpicking right now. It didn't affect functionality, but the takedown pin was smoother whenever I replaced it with this grip versus the other one, or at least it was more consistent. The bolt, I already talked about. The bolt was very sticky initially. It was very hard to rack. Well, actually, tell you what, let's fire one more. Oh. Dear goodness.
extracting around out of here is holy crap. I don't know, that bolt is incredibly sticky in there. Maybe it just needs, I don't know, a little bit of lube or something.
Putting the Radian charging handle in there did help. Lubricating it helped further, and then breaking the gun in, you know, after about 50 rounds or so, you know, finished it off to where now it's pretty smooth. The charging handle I already talked about. You just throw this thing in the trash whenever you get it. Buy yourself a Radian or something else that's better. You're not going to want that. The castle nut on here. So here's another issue. So most people probably won't come into this because they're not going to swap out the stock. But the castle nut on the buffer extension, the buffer tube, whatever you want to call it. So whenever it was on there and I had to take it off to put this on there, the castle nut was not torqued to spec. I don't know what spec it was torqued to or what foot-pounds it was torqued to, but whenever I took my tool and just barely started turning, and now it was staked properly. It actually had 2 stakes. So that's good. But normally, you know, whenever you try to remove those things, you basically have to, you know, gorilla mode to get the things off, because they're put on there with a little bit of force, especially whenever they come from PSA. Like, PSA is known for just ugga-buggaing the snot out of just everything. With this one, it was the opposite. I don't know if the guy was, you know, half asleep that day or whatever, but yeah, whenever it was tightened on there, it was not tightened to spec, because as soon as I turned the wrench at all, and it was one of the shorter ones, not, you know, the long ones. It was a little short boy that's just kind of used to move it. It spun pretty much immediately. The only thing that was holding it in place was the stakings on the castle nut. Now, I shot it the first time with the carbine buffer on there and you know, stock and everything. And did it come loose? No. The staking did its job, and that's why you should stake your castle nuts. But that castle nut should have been staked to proper spec. It was not. It was loose. So that was an issue. And all these are small quality control things that, again, for $650, $700, I'll give a pass to, because at that price, I expect to have to tinker and mess with this gun to some degree. All right, so as you can see on here, this bolt catch works fine now. So whenever I first got it, I was shooting, and whenever I got home, the bolt catch, you know, everything worked fine. Whenever I got home, I noticed that my bolt catch, and I'll send you, I have little clips of this. This thing, there was no spring tension. And I was like, well, that's not good. Did the spring snap? Did the spring, you know, fall out? Or I don't know. I wasn't exactly sure what happened. Or, you know, did the detent get stuck inside there? But I was like, well, it worked fine initially, so I don't think anything, you know, was broken. The only thing I could think of was the detent got stuck, or maybe the spring somehow snapped in half and like fell inside of itself. I don't know. So I decided to contact PSA's customer service and ask them, hey, if I take this apart and, you know, take out this right here, is that going to void my warranty? And then I decided, you know what, I don't really care. I'm just going to do it anyways. And they actually, you know, got back the next day and said, no, it's not going to void your warranty. And so I knocked out the pin, took it out, and sure enough, there was on the inside here where the hole is, and I'll show you pictures, insert here. The metal, you can see, like, whatever the tool, the drill bit that they use on the CNC machine or whatever they use, didn't drill a clean hole. So like the outer edges of it were kind of like rough and had little like metal chips and shavings and burrs, for lack of better words. They were catching the little detent that, you know, presses against this. So that was causing the detent to get stuck inside. So I was like, well, that's not that big of a deal. Hopefully, assuming I can get the detent out. I, you know, got a brass punch. It was the same size, kind of fidgeted with it, pushing it out and spinning it until I could finally get it where it came out. And then I just took that brass punch, kind of put it in the hole and wiggled it around, haha, and broke off the burrs and anything, and then kind of smoothed it out a little bit. And I thought that fixed it, so I put it back in. And at that point, I told PSA, hey, well, I drifted out this pin, and this is what happened. I'm going to need at least a replacements part, you know, to replace the pins properly. And so to their credit, they sent this out. And so I have this now for whenever I want to, you know, it comes with the extra pin. So whenever I want to put that in there, I can use it. So I took it to the range again, and same thing happened. I was like, ugh, so that's obnoxious. So I had to take this thing out again. And that time I decided, well, let's take a punch that's, you know, the correct diameter. I don't remember what it is, like 332, something like that. Whatever the dimension for the little hole on the inside is there. I took a brass or a drill bit, stuck it in there, and sure enough, it wouldn't go all the way in. So I was like, so it's undersized or there's something inside. So I looked inside, and sure enough, I could see some type of imperfection, like inside the hole where the detent goes, kind of on the bottom. and I think it was a burr. I don't know, it could have been a metal shaving or something stuck, but anyways, it was an imperfection. So I just took MacGyvered, full up redneck, probably voided my warranty, but I basically just took a drill bit that was the correct size and just drilled inside the hole and just smoothed it out. And as soon as I did that, I could tell a noticeable difference, because the drill bit wouldn't actually go all the way inside the hole because of that burr. And once I drilled it out, again, it didn't remove any material except that burr. It's been flawless since, and it hasn't gotten caught or anything. So again, is that a quality control issue? Yes. Is that something that someone's probably going to notice with their naked eye? Probably not. Whenever they put the detent in there, it would only catch, if it was spun just right. So I don't know that I blame PSA for that necessarily. You get stuff like that with every, company, but I just want to mention that. And to be fair, they did include this. So, while that was something that's technically wrong with the lower, at least they did send replacement parts. So if that roll pin that holds everything in was weakened for me removing it twice, they at least gave me the spare parts. So kudos to PSA. They do have customer service, good customer service, but in good warranty. But no, whenever you spend money, and you spend less money on something, it's going to be cheaper in quality. Just know you're gonna have to do some MacGyvering yourself. Generally, not always. Sometimes you'll get something that works perfectly fine, but just be prepared and be okay with the fact that you're gonna have to, tinker with it just a little bit. But anyways, if y'all have any questions, again, I'll insert all the accuracy video footage here and all the problems that I had. But if you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. Again, this is not me bashing PSA. I actually really like their company and what they stand for. This is just, my experience with this gun, and I actually really, really like this gun. I was blown away with the accuracy, and I'm thrilled. I haven't had a chance to shoot this thing, out to 800 yards yet, but our range does go out to 800 yards. I was able to shoot out to 300 just in testing, but again, this is just kind of initial test. If I have any problems, or maybe I'll do a long range test in the future, if you're interested in that, just kind of let me know down in the comments below. But again, if you have any questions, let me know. Like, subscribe to the channel. That helps quite a bit. YouTube doesn't like this kind of stuff, so if you can help in that way, I would really appreciate it. But anyways, if you have any questions, let me know, and have a good one.